My name is Isla. And this is the story of how I went from being the girl everyone pitted to the woman no one dared to cross. I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine walking into a room full of people who already decided who you are before you even opened your mouth. Imagine their eyes scanning you up and down. Their smiles polite but empty. Their whispers just loud enough for you to catch fragments of judgment. Now imagine that every single week. At every company event. At every meeting. At every lunch. That was my life when I first started working at Shaw and Harrington Consulting. And the woman leading that chorus of whispers? Lydia Monroe Shaw. The wife of my boss. The queen of every room she entered. The woman everyone wanted to impress, to befriend, to be seen with. She was stunning in that untouchable way. Hair always perfectly curled. Skin glowing like she had her own personal lighting team. Pearls that probably cost more than my rent. And a smile that could charm you 1 second and gut you the next. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could be civil. Maybe even friendly. I was so wrong. But before I tell you about Lydia, before I tell you about what happened at that luncheon, I need to tell you how I got here. I need you to understand who I was before all of this. Because that matters. It matters more than you might think. 6 months before I started at Shaw and Harrington, I was a completely different person. I was living in a small apartment across the city with my boyfriend of 3 years, Marcus. Marcus was everything I thought I wanted. Charming. Ambitious. The kind of man who could walk into any room and own it. We met in college. He was studying business. I was studying communications. We were that couple. The one everyone thought would make it. We talked about marriage. About buying a house. About building a life together. But somewhere along the way, things changed. He changed. Or maybe I just finally saw who he really was. It started small. Little comments here and there. Are you really wearing that? You know, you could stand to lose a few pounds. Why do you always have to be so sensitive? I brushed it off at first. Told myself he was just stressed. That work was getting to him. That every relationship had rough patches. But the comments became more frequent. More cutting. He started comparing me to other women. His coworkers. His friends' girlfriends. Even random women on social media. Why cannot you dress like her? She actually takes care of herself. You used to put in effort. Each comment was like a small cut. Barely noticeable at first. But they added up. Day after day. Week after week. Until I started to believe him. I started looking in the mirror and hating what I saw. I started second-guessing everything I said, everything I wore, everything I did. I became smaller, quieter, invisible. And then one night, I came home early from work. I had a headache and my boss had let me leave an hour early. I opened the door to our apartment and heard voices. Laughter. A woman's laughter. My stomach dropped. I walked down the hallway slowly, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. And there they were. Marcus and a woman I had never seen before. On our couch. His hand on her thigh. Her head thrown back, laughing at something he said. They did not even notice me at first. I stood there, frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. And then Marcus looked up. For a split second, I saw panic in his eyes. But it vanished just as quickly, replaced by annoyance. Isla, he said flatly. You are home early. Not an apology. Not an explanation. Just annoyance that I had interrupted. The woman looked at me with something between pity and amusement. And that is when I knew. This was not the first time. Probably not even the second or third. I had just been too blind to see it. Get out, I said quietly. Isla, you are overreacting. Get out, I screamed. The woman grabbed her purse and left quickly, avoiding my eyes. Marcus stood up slowly, buttoning his shirt as if nothing had happened. You know what your problem is, Isla? He said calmly. You are too needy. Too desperate. No wonder I went looking elsewhere. Those words hit me harder than anything physical ever could. Desperate. He called me desperate. For wanting loyalty. For wanting respect. For wanting to be loved. He left that night. Packed a bag and walked out without looking back. And I collapsed on the floor of that apartment. And cried until I had nothing left. For weeks after that, I could barely function. I called in sick to work. I stopped answering calls from friends. I lived in pajamas and survived on coffee and crackers. I replayed every moment of our relationship in my mind. Every fight. Every criticism. Every time he made me feel small. And I wondered how I had let it get so bad. How I had lost myself so completely. My best friend, Tessa, finally showed up at my apartment unannounced. She took one look at me and said, "Okay, enough. You are getting out of this city." "Tessa, I cannot just." "Yes, you can. There is a job opening at a consulting firm where my cousin works. Shaw and Harrington. It is across the city. Fresh start. New people. Better pay." I wanted to say no. I wanted to stay in that apartment and hide from the world. But something in Tessa's eyes told me she was not giving me a choice. So I applied. And somehow, against all odds, I got the job. Assistant project manager at Shaw and Harrington Consulting. It felt like a lifeline. A chance to rebuild. To prove to myself that I was more than what Marcus had made me believe. I moved into a tiny studio apartment. It was not much, but it was mine. Just mine. I bought new work clothes. Got a haircut. Tried to convince myself that this was a new beginning. And for the first few days at Shaw and Harrington, it felt like it was. The office was beautiful. Modern. Professional. Everyone seemed busy and focused. My direct supervisor was a woman named Cameron Hayes. She was sharp, no nonsense but fair. She gave me clear instructions and trusted me to do my job. I thought maybe finally, things were going to be okay. And then I met Lydia. It was at the first company dinner I attended. A monthly tradition where the partners and their spouses gathered with the senior staff. I had been so nervous getting ready that night. I tried on 4 different dresses before settling on a simple black one. I did my makeup 3 times. I practiced what I would say if someone asked me about myself. I wanted to make a good impression. I wanted to prove that I belonged. I arrived at the restaurant, a fancy Italian place with white tablecloths and candles on every table. The partners were already seated, drinks in hand, laughing about something I could not hear. And there, at the center of it all, was Lydia. She was breathtaking. Not just beautiful, but commanding. The kind of woman who drew every eye in the room without even trying. She wore a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her dark hair was pulled back in an elegant twist. Her jewelry was understated but clearly expensive. She was talking to the other wives, gesturing gracefully with her wine glass, and they hung on her every word. I approached the table slowly, clutching my purse like it was a shield. Cameron saw me and waved me over. "Isla, come meet everyone." I smiled nervously and walked over. Cameron introduced me to the partners one by one. They were polite, welcoming even. Shook my hand. Said they were glad to have me on the team. And then Cameron said, "And this is Lydia Monroe Shaw. She is Richard's wife." Richard Shaw, one of the founding partners. My boss. Lydia turned to me slowly, her eyes sweeping over me from head to toe. It was not a quick glance. It was a full assessment. And I could see the moment she decided I was beneath her. Her smile was polite but cold. "Oh, you must be the new assistant," she said sweetly. "How cute." Cute. The word felt like a dismissal. Like I was a child playing dress-up. I forced a smile. "It is nice to meet you, Mrs. Shaw." "Please call me Lydia," she said, already turning away from me. "Mrs. Shaw makes me sound so old." The other women laughed, and just like that, I was forgotten. I stood there awkwardly for a moment before quietly finding a seat at the far end of the table. Throughout dinner, I tried to engage in conversation. Tried to be friendly. Tried to fit in. But every time I spoke, Lydia would talk over me. Or she would make a comment that made everyone laugh. And my words would just disappear into the noise. At one point, I mentioned that I had studied communications in college. Lydia smiled and said, "Oh, how practical. I studied art history at Yale. Not nearly as useful, but it was wonderful for my personal growth." The way she said useful made it clear she thought my degree was beneath hers. Another wife chimed in. "Where did you study, Isla?" "State University." I said quietly. "Oh," Lydia said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. Well, education is education, I suppose. The conversation moved on. I spent the rest of the dinner in silence, pushing food around my plate, counting down the minutes until I could leave. When I finally got home that night, I sat on my couch and cried. Not because of what Lydia had said, but because I realized that even here, in this new place, with this fresh start, I still was not enough. I was still the girl who did not belong. The girl who tried too hard. The desperate girl. Marcus's words echoed in my head. Too needy. Too desperate. And now Lydia's. How cute. I went to bed that night feeling like I would never escape that label. But I was wrong. Because the next few months would teach me that sometimes, the people who try to break you are the ones who end up broken. Over the following weeks, I tried to keep my head down at work. I focused on my projects. I stayed late to prove I was dedicated. I arrived early to show I was serious. Cameron seemed pleased with my work. She started giving me more responsibility, more complex projects. I was good at my job. Really good. But every company event, every social gathering, Lydia was there. And she made sure I knew my place. At a cocktail party for a new client, Lydia walked past me and said loud enough for others to hear. Some girls just try too hard. It is desperate, really. The women around her laughed softly. I felt my face burn with shame, but I smiled. Pretended I had not heard. At a charity auction, Lydia asked me in front of a group of people if I had bought my dress on sale. I love a good bargain, she said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. So resourceful. Everyone laughed. Polite laughter. But laughter nonetheless. At a holiday party, she introduced me to someone as Richard's little helper. Not his assistant. Not a project manager. His little helper. Like I was a secretary from the 1950s. Each comment was small. Each one could have been brushed off as a joke. But together, they formed a pattern of humiliation. And no one stopped her. No one called her out. No one defended me. Because Lydia Monroe Shaw was untouchable. She was beautiful, wealthy, connected. Her husband was a founding partner. Her friends were the wives of powerful men. Who was I? Just the new girl. The assistant. The one who did not matter. I started dreading events. My stomach would twist into knots the morning of a company gathering. I would stand in front of my closet, paralyzed with anxiety, wondering what I could wear that would not give her ammunition. But it did not matter. She always found something. My hair. My shoes. My jewelry. My lack of jewelry. Nothing was ever right. I started losing weight. Not intentionally. I just stopped being hungry. Tessa noticed. Isla, are you okay? You look exhausted. I am fine, I lied. Just busy with work. But I was not fine. I was being slowly destroyed by a woman who barely knew me. A woman who had decided, for reasons I could not understand, that I was a threat. And then one night, at a charity gala, everything changed. The gala was the biggest event of the year. Black tie. Held in a grand ballroom with crystal chandeliers and marble floors. I had almost decided not to go. I was so tired of the humiliation. So tired of pretending everything was fine. But Richard Shaw himself had asked me to attend. He said it was important for team morale. Important for the company image. So I went. I wore a deep emerald green dress. It was the most expensive thing I owned. I had saved for months to buy it. I did my makeup carefully. Wore my hair down in soft waves. I even bought new heels. I wanted to feel confident. Just once. When I arrived, the ballroom was already filled with people. Music played softly in the background. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I took a glass of champagne and tried to blend in. Lydia was, of course, the center of attention. She wore a stunning red gown that made her look like a movie star. Her husband Richard was by her side, shaking hands, laughing, playing the role of the successful businessman. I stayed near the back, by the tall windows overlooking the city, hoping to avoid notice. But fate had other plans. Richard Shaw approached me about an hour into the event. Isla, he said smoothly, holding a glass of scotch. I am glad you could make it. I turned surprised. Richard rarely spoke to me outside of work meetings. He was tall, probably in his mid-50s, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. He had the kind of presence that commanded respect. The kind of confidence that came from decades of success. "Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Shaw," I said politely. "It is a beautiful event." "Please call me Richard," he said, stepping closer. Too close. I could smell his cologne. Expensive. Overpowering. "You look beautiful tonight," he said quietly. My stomach clenched. "Thank you." There was a pause. An uncomfortable, heavy pause. His eyes moved over me slowly. Appraisingly. "You know, Isla," he said, his voice low. "I have been watching you at the office. You are very talented. Very dedicated." "I thank you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I enjoy the work." He took a sip of his scotch, never breaking eye contact. "You deserve more recognition. More opportunities." "I appreciate that," I said, taking a small step back. He stepped forward, closing the distance again. "You deserve someone who actually sees you," he said softly. "Someone who appreciates you for who you are." My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. Someone like me. The words hung in the air like poison. I felt like I could not breathe. Like the walls were closing in. I should go. I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. "Isla, wait." But I did not wait. I turned and walked away as quickly as I could without running. My vision was blurry. My hands were trembling so badly, I almost dropped my glass. I made it to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. I sat down on the closed toilet seat and put my head in my hands, trying to breathe, trying to think. Did that really just happen? Did my boss, the husband of the woman who had spent months humiliating me, just proposition me? I felt nauseous, violated, terrified. And then slowly another feeling crept in. Anger. Because suddenly, everything made sense. Lydia's cruelty. Her constant need to tear me down. Her obsession with making me feel small. It was not about me at all. It was about him. She knew. On some level. She knew what kind of man her husband was. She knew he could not be trusted. She knew he had wandering eyes. Wandering hands. And instead of confronting him, instead of holding him accountable, she made me the villain. She tore me apart to protect her perfect image. To keep everyone from seeing the cracks in her perfect marriage. And I was not the first. I was sure of it. How many other women had Richard approached? How many had Lydia torn down before me? I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and opened a new note. I typed everything Richard had said to me. Every word. Every detail. The date. The time. The location. I took a screenshot. And then I made a decision. I was not going to let this destroy me. I was not going to be another woman Richard Shaw used and discarded. I was not going to let Lydia Monroe Shaw make me feel desperate ever again. I was going to take control. I stayed in that bathroom for 20 minutes, composing myself, planning my next move. And when I finally walked out, I held my head high. I did not run. I did not hide. I walked back into that ballroom like I owned it. Richard saw me and tried to approach again, but I turned away, joining a group of colleagues on the other side of the room. I felt his eyes on me for the rest of the night, but I did not look back, because I knew this was just the beginning. And I was ready. The text started 2 days later. I was at my desk, working on a presentation when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I opened the message. "Isla, this is Richard. I hope I did not make you uncomfortable at the gala. That was not my intention." My stomach turned. I did not respond, but I took a screenshot. An hour later, another message. "I just think you are incredibly talented and deserve more recognition. I would love to discuss your career trajectory sometime." Another screenshot. The next day, another message. "We should have coffee. Just the two of us. I think we could work very well together." The language was carefully chosen. Professional enough to have plausible deniability. But the subtext was clear. I did not respond to any of them. But I saved every single one. Then the calls started. Late at night. After work hours. From his personal number. I never answered. But I documented every single call. The time. The duration. At work, he started finding excuses to talk to me. He would stop by my desk to ask about projects he had never shown interest in before. He would linger during meetings, his eyes following me as I spoke. Once, as he walked past me in the hallway, his hand brushed against my lower back. It could have been an accident. But I knew it was not. I flinched, but I said nothing. I just added it to my growing list of evidence. All the while, Lydia's campaign of cruelty continued. At another company luncheon, she asked me loudly if I was still single and looking. "The dating scene must be so hard for you," she said with false sympathy. "But do not worry. The right man will come along eventually." The other women nodded sympathetically, not realizing the cruelty behind her words. At a company dinner, she told someone I was sweet, but a little simple. At a cocktail party, she made a comment about my shoes being last season. She thought she was winning. She thought she had broken me. But what she did not know was that I was building a case. A case against her husband. A case that would destroy everything she had worked so hard to protect. I spent weeks meticulously documenting everything. I created a folder on my personal laptop with screenshots, call logs, detailed notes about every interaction. I researched workplace harassment laws. I read about similar cases. I learned what I would need to prove my case. And I waited. I waited for the perfect moment. Because I knew one thing for certain. When you are dealing with powerful people, you only get one shot. One chance to make your case. One chance to be heard. And if you miss it, if you do not have enough evidence, if you cannot prove beyond doubt what happened, they will destroy you. They will call you a liar. They will say you are making it up for attention. For money. For revenge. They will tear apart your character, your history, your credibility. And everyone will believe them. Because they are powerful. Because they are respected. Because they are good people. So I waited. I collected every piece of evidence I could find. And I prepared myself for war. The opportunity came 6 weeks later. Lydia was hosting one of her famous Women of Grace luncheons. These events were legendary in the company. Exclusive. Invitation only. She held them at her home. A massive estate in the suburbs with manicured gardens and a view of the lake. Only the wives of partners and a select few female executives were invited. I had never been invited before. Obviously. But this time, her assistant called me personally. "Mrs. Shaw would like to extend an invitation to you for this month's Women of Grace luncheon," the assistant said formally. She thought it would be a good opportunity for you to network with the other women in the company. I almost laughed. Lydia wanting me to network? Lydia wanting to help me? No. She wanted one more chance to humiliate me in front of her friends. One more chance to remind everyone that I was beneath them. One more chance to prove she was queen. And I was going to give her exactly what she wanted. Well, almost. "Please tell Mrs. Shaw I would be honored to attend," I said sweetly. I spent the next week preparing. I went through my evidence folder. Made sure everything was organized. Made sure every screenshot was clear. Every detail was accurate. I practiced what I would say. How I would say it. How I would stay calm when she inevitably tried to humiliate me. Because I knew it was coming. I knew she could not resist. And I was counting on it. The day of the luncheon, I woke up early. I took a long shower. Did my makeup carefully. Not too much, not too little. Just enough to look polished and professional. I wore a simple cream silk blouse and tailored navy pants. Classic. Elegant. Unassuming. I pulled my hair back in a low ponytail. Minimal jewelry. Just small gold earrings. I looked calm. Collected. Unbothered. Everything I was not feeling inside. Because inside, my heart was racing. My hands were sweating. My stomach was in knots. But I could not let it show. I had to be perfect. In control. Unshakable. Because the moment I showed weakness, the moment I let them see I was affected, I would lose. I drove to Lydia's estate, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The house was even more impressive in person. A sprawling mansion with white columns and perfectly trimmed hedges. A circular driveway with a fountain in the center. There were already several cars parked outside. Expensive cars. BMWs, Mercedes. A Tesla. I parked my modest sedan at the end of the row and took a deep breath. "You can do this," I whispered to myself. You can do this. I grabbed my purse, checking one more time that my phone was fully charged, and walked to the front door. A woman in a black and white uniform answered. A housekeeper. Welcome, she said with a polite smile. The luncheon is in the sunroom. This way. She led me through the house, and I tried not to gawk at the opulence. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, original artwork on every wall, fresh flowers in elaborate arrangements. Everything was perfect, curated, designed to impress. We passed through a massive living room with floor-to-ceiling windows and arrived at the sunroom. It was stunning. All glass walls overlooking the garden. White furniture with pale blue cushions. A long table set with fine china and crystal glasses. And there they were. About 15 women, all dressed in expensive designer clothes, sipping champagne and nibbling on delicate appetizers. I recognized most of them. Partners' wives. Senior executives. Women who had watched Lydia humiliate me time and time again. Women who had said nothing. Done nothing. Lydia stood at the head of the room, holding court as always. She wore a pale pink dress that probably cost more than I made in a month. Her hair was perfectly styled. Her makeup flawless. She looked like she had stepped out of a magazine. When she saw me, her smile widened. But it did not reach her eyes. Isla, she exclaimed, loud enough for everyone to hear. So glad you could make it. She walked over and air-kissed both my cheeks. The kind of fake greeting that rich women do. We love having fresh faces at these events, she said, emphasizing the word fresh like it was an insult. Fresh. New. Inexperienced. Out of place. Thank you for inviting me, Lydia, I said calmly. Your home is beautiful. Oh, you are too kind, she said, waving her hand dismissively. It is just a little place we call home. Just a little place. Right. She led me into the room, introducing me to the other women. Most of them smiled politely and immediately forgot my name. A few looked at me with something between curiosity and pity. They knew. They all knew Lydia had been tearing me apart for months. And now they were curious to see what would happen next. I took a seat near the edge of the group, accepting a glass of champagne from a server. The luncheon began with small talk, harmless gossip, discussions about charity events, upcoming vacations, children's schools. I stayed quiet, observing, waiting. And then about halfway through the meal, Lydia made her move. She was in the middle of a story about some charity auction when she suddenly turned to me. So Isla, she said, her voice sweet but with an edge. How are things going at the office? Very well, thank you, I said calmly. That is wonderful, she said, smiling. And your personal life? Still single. The room went quiet. All eyes on me. Here it was. The moment she had been waiting for. Yes, I said simply. She tilted her head, her smile widening. Do not worry, darling. Men love a girl who tries. There it was. The final insult. The ultimate dismissal. Calling me desperate. Again. In front of everyone. The other women looked uncomfortable. A few shifted in their seats. But no one said anything. And I smiled. A real smile this time. Because this was the moment I had been waiting for. You are right, Lydia, I said calmly, setting down my champagne glass. Men do love that. I paused, letting the silence stretch. Every eye in the room was on me. Yours in particular has been trying quite hard lately. The room froze. Lydia's smile faltered. Just for a second. But I saw it. Excuse me, she said, her voice strained. I reached into my purse slowly, deliberately, and pulled out my phone. I unlocked it, opened the folder I had carefully prepared, and I placed it on the table in front of her. Would you like to read them? I asked softly. Or should I read them aloud? No one moved. No one breathed. Lydia stared at the phone like it was a snake about to strike. Her face had gone pale. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the phone. She scrolled through the messages, her eyes darting across the screen. 1 message, 2 messages, 10 messages, 20, each one more damning than the last. I hope I did not make you uncomfortable. You are incredibly talented. We should have coffee, just the two of us. You deserve someone who appreciates you. Someone like me. The other women began to lean in, trying to see the screen. Lydia's hand shot out, covering the phone. This is not what it looks like, she said, her voice shaking. Really? I said calmly. Because it looks like your husband has been sexually harassing me for weeks. It looks like he propositioned me at the charity gala. It looks like he has been sending me inappropriate messages. Calling me late at night. Touching me without my consent. You are lying, Lydia hissed. Am I? I said. Because those are his messages. From his phone. With dates and times. I also have call logs. Witnesses to his inappropriate behavior in the office. And a very detailed account of everything he said to me at the gala. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. Of humiliation. You did this on purpose, she said, her voice venomous. You threw yourself at him. You dressed provocatively. I what? I interrupted, my voice sharp. I existed? I did my job. I had the audacity to be young and female in the same building as your husband. The other women were silent. Shocked. You have been calling me desperate for months. I continued, my voice steady. You have humiliated me at every opportunity. Made me feel worthless. Made me question everything about myself. And I let you. Because I thought maybe I deserved it. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I was overreacting. I stood up slowly, smoothing my blouse. But you knew, did you not, Lydia? You knew what kind of man your husband was. You knew he could not be trusted around women. So instead of holding him accountable, you made every woman around him the villain. You tore us down to protect your perfect image. Your perfect marriage. Your perfect life. Tears were streaming down her face now. You do not know anything about my life, she whispered. You are right, I said softly. I do not. But I know this. I am done being your punching bag. I am done being called desperate for wanting respect. For wanting to do my job without being harassed. For wanting to exist without being torn apart. I picked up my phone and put it back in my purse. I will be filing a formal complaint with HR on Monday morning, I said. And I will be providing them with all of this evidence. What happens next is up to them. But I am done staying silent. I looked around the room at all the women who had watched me suffer and said nothing. And to everyone here, I said quietly. I hope you never have to experience what I went through. But if you do, I hope you have the courage to speak up. Because silence only protects the people who hurt us. I turned and walked toward the door. Wait, Lydia said, her voice breaking. I stopped but did not turn around. Please, she whispered. Do not do this. It will ruin him. It will ruin everything. I turned slowly and looked at her. Really looked at her. And I saw a woman who had spent so long protecting a lie that she had forgotten who she was. A woman who had sacrificed her integrity, her kindness, her humanity to maintain an image. And I felt something I did not expect. Pity. He ruined himself, Lydia, I said quietly. I am just telling the truth. And I walked out. No yelling. No drama. No tears. Just silence. The kind of silence that burns. I walked through that massive house, past the marble floors and crystal chandeliers and expensive artwork. I walked out the front door, and down the circular driveway to my modest car. And I drove away. My hands were shaking. My hands were shaking so badly I had to pull over 3 blocks away. I gripped the steering wheel, and let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. And then I started to cry. Not tears of sadness. Tears of release. Years of being made to feel small. Years of being called desperate. Years of swallowing insults and pretending everything was fine. It all came pouring out. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen. And then I wiped my face, started the car, and drove home. Because I knew this was just the beginning. The real battle was about to start. That night I could not sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the luncheon over and over in my mind. Had I done the right thing? Had I gone too far? What if no one believed me? What if they sided with Richard? What if I just destroyed my career for nothing? But then I remembered the look on Lydia's face when she saw those messages. The panic. The fear. Because she knew they were real. She knew I was telling the truth. And that was all that mattered. Around midnight, my phone started buzzing. Text messages. Dozens of them. Some from numbers I did not recognize. I opened them hesitantly. The first few were from women at the luncheon. I am so sorry for what you went through. Thank you for being brave enough to speak up. I should have said something before. I am sorry I did not. Then messages from colleagues at work. I heard what happened. We are with you. Richard Shaw has been inappropriate with other women too. You are not alone. Please let me know if you need anything. Anything at all. And then one message that made my heart stop. It was from Cameron Hayes, my supervisor. Isla, I need you to call me as soon as you see this. No matter what time it is. My hands trembled as I dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. Isla, she said, her voice serious. Are you okay? I think so, I said quietly. I heard what happened at Lydia's luncheon, she said. Multiple people have reached out to me. And I need you to know something. I held my breath. You are not the first woman Richard Shaw has harassed, she said. I have known for years that he was a problem. But every time someone came forward, he would settle quietly. Pay them off. Make them sign NDAs. And the board would look the other way, because he brought in too much money. My stomach turned. I should have done something sooner, Cameron continued, her voice thick with emotion. I should have protected you. Protected all of you. And I did not. I am so sorry, Cameron. But this time is going to be different, she said firmly. Because this time you have documented everything. You have witnesses. You have proof that cannot be ignored or buried. And I am going to make sure the board hears every single word. Tears streamed down my face. Thank you, I whispered. No, she said. Thank you. For being brave enough to speak up when the rest of us stayed silent. We talked for another hour. She explained the process. What would happen next? What I should expect. On Monday morning, I would meet with HR and the board. I would present my evidence. They would conduct an investigation. Richard would be suspended immediately pending the results. And if everything I said was true, and Cameron assured me they would find that it was, Richard Shaw would be terminated. His partnership dissolved. His reputation destroyed. Everything he had built over decades would crumble. Are you prepared for that? Cameron asked gently. Because this is going to get ugly. He is going to fight back. He is going to try to discredit you. He is going to make your life hell. I thought about it for a moment. About Marcus calling me desperate. About Lydia tearing me apart for months. About Richard thinking he could use his power to manipulate me. Yes, I said firmly. I am ready. Good, Cameron said. Because we are going to win this. That weekend was the longest of my life. I barely left my apartment. I ate almost nothing. I went over my evidence 1,000 times, making sure every detail was perfect. Tessa came over on Sunday with food and moral support. You are doing the right thing, she said, squeezing my hand. You know that, right? I know, I said. But I am terrified. That is okay, she said. Being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you do it anyway. Monday morning arrived too quickly. I woke up at 5 a.m., unable to sleep any longer. I showered and dressed carefully. A black pantsuit. White blouse. Hair pulled back. Minimal makeup. I looked professional. Credible. Strong. Even though inside I was falling apart. I arrived at the office at 8:30. The meeting was scheduled for 9. The building felt different somehow. Quieter. Heavier. Word had clearly spread about what happened at the luncheon. People stared at me as I walked through the lobby. Some with sympathy. Some with curiosity. Some with suspicion. I kept my head high and walked straight to the conference room. Cameron was already there, along with 2 HR representatives and 3 members of the board. Richard Shaw was not there. Neither was Lydia. Thank you for coming, Isla, one of the board members said. His name was Theodore Mitchell. Gray hair. Kind eyes. We understand this is difficult. Please sit down. I sat, placing my phone and a folder of printed documents on the table. We have heard some very serious allegations, Theodore continued. And we want to give you the opportunity to present your case fully. Take your time. Tell us everything. So I did. I started from the beginning. The charity gala. Richard cornering me. What he said. How he made me feel. I showed them the messages. All of them. Weeks worth of inappropriate texts. I showed them the call logs. Late night calls. Early morning calls. Calls during work hours. I told them about the times he touched me inappropriately. The lingering hand on my back. The way he would stand too close. I told them about other women in the office who had confided in me after hearing what happened. Women who had experienced similar behavior, but were too afraid to speak up. And I told them about Lydia. About how she had spent months humiliating me. About how she knew what her husband was, but blamed the women instead. I spoke for over an hour. When I finished, the room was silent. Theodore looked at the other board members. They nodded. Thank you, Isla, he said quietly. This took tremendous courage. And I want you to know that we take these allegations very seriously. What happens now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. As of this moment, Richard Shaw is suspended without pay, Theodore said. We will conduct a full investigation. We will interview the other women you mentioned. We will review all the evidence you have provided. And if everything is substantiated, which I have no doubt it will be, Richard Shaw will be terminated and his partnership dissolved. Relief washed over me so intensely I thought I might pass out. As for you, Theodore continued, we owe you an apology. You should never have been put in this position. You should never have had to endure months of harassment and humiliation. And we failed you. Tears filled my eyes. We would like to offer you a promotion, he said. Lead project manager. With a significant raise in your own team. You have proven yourself to be not only talented and dedicated, but incredibly brave. We would be honored to have you continue with this firm. I could not speak. I just nodded, tears streaming down my face. Cameron reached over and squeezed my hand. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. The investigation took 2 weeks. During that time, the office was in chaos. Richard tried to fight back, just as Cameron predicted. He hired an expensive lawyer. He claimed I was lying. That I had misinterpreted friendly gestures. That I was trying to extort money from him. But then 3 other women came forward. Women who had worked at the firm years ago. Women who had taken settlements and signed NDAs. But now, seeing my courage, they broke their silence. They told their stories. Stories that were horrifyingly similar to mine. And Richard's defense crumbled. The board had no choice. The evidence was overwhelming. 2 weeks after my meeting with HR, Richard Shaw was officially terminated. His name was removed from the company letterhead. His office was cleared out. His partnership was dissolved. Shaw and Harrington became Harrington and Associates. Richard tried to save face. He released a statement saying he was stepping down to focus on personal matters. But everyone knew the truth. He had been fired for sexual harassment. And his reputation was destroyed. As for Lydia, she disappeared from public life completely. She deleted all her social media accounts. Stopped hosting her luncheons. Stopped attending company events. I heard through the grapevine that she and Richard were getting divorced. That she had filed within days of his termination. Part of me felt sorry for her. Part of me wondered if she was also a victim in some way. But mostly, I just felt relieved that I would never have to see her again. My promotion became official 3 weeks later. I was given a corner office with windows overlooking the city, a team of 4 talented analysts, and a salary that was double what I had been making. But more than that, I was given respect. People looked at me differently now. Not with pity or suspicion, but with admiration. Women I had never spoken to before started reaching out to me, thanking me, telling me their own stories, asking for advice. I became an unofficial mentor, a safe person to talk to, someone who had proven that speaking up was worth it. The first project I led as lead project manager was a massive success. We landed a major client, delivered ahead of schedule, exceeded every expectation. Cameron called me into her office the day the project wrapped. I am proud of you, Isla, she said. Not just for this project, though it was brilliant, but for everything. For standing up. For refusing to be silenced. For changing this company for the better. Thank you, I said. I could not have done it without your support. Yes, you could have, she said with a smile. You are stronger than you know. 6 months after the luncheon, I was invited to speak at a women's leadership conference. They wanted me to share my story, to inspire other women to speak up against harassment and discrimination. I was terrified. The idea of standing on a stage in front of hundreds of people and reliving the worst months of my life was overwhelming. But I said yes, because I realized something important. My story was not just mine anymore. It belonged to every woman who had been called desperate for wanting respect. Every woman who had been made to feel small for taking up space. Every woman who had stayed silent because she thought no one would believe her. The day of the conference, I stood backstage, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. Tessa was there with me. She squeezed my hand. You are going to be amazing, she said. What if I mess up? I asked. Then you mess up, she said. But you are still going to change lives today. You are going to give women the courage to speak up. And that is all that matters. They called my name. I walked onto that stage, the lights blinding, the audience a sea of faces. And I told my story. I told them about Marcus. About how he made me feel worthless. I told them about Lydia. About months of humiliation. I told them about Richard. About harassment and manipulation and abuse of power. And I told them about fighting back. About documenting everything. About refusing to stay silent. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. And then they stood. All of them. A standing ovation that lasted for what felt like forever. Women were crying. Applauding. Some were nodding, their own stories written on their faces. After the speech, dozens of women came up to me. They hugged me, thanked me, shared their own stories. One woman, probably in her 50s, grabbed my hands and said, 30 years ago, I was harassed by my boss. And I stayed silent. I quit my job and never told anyone. I have regretted it every day since. Thank you for doing what I could not. Another woman, younger, maybe early 20s, said, I am dealing with something similar right now. And I have been too scared to report it. But after hearing your story, I am going to. Thank you for giving me courage. That night, lying in my hotel room, I thought about how far I had come. A year ago, I was broken. Destroyed by a man who made me feel worthless. 6 months ago, I was being humiliated by a woman who saw me as a threat. And now I was speaking on stages, leading teams, inspiring others. I was not the desperate girl anymore. I was not the girl who tried too hard. I was not the girl who needed to shrink to make others comfortable. I was strong. I was brave. I was worthy. And nothing anyone said could take that away from me. A year after the luncheon, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name written in elegant handwriting. I opened it carefully. It was from Lydia. My heart raced as I unfolded the paper. Dear Isla, it began. I do not expect you to read this. I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not even expect you to believe me. But I need to say this, even if only for myself. You were right. About everything. I knew what Richard was. I had known for years. And instead of leaving him, instead of holding him accountable, I made every woman around him the enemy. I told myself I was protecting my marriage, protecting my family, protecting the life I had built. But the truth is, I was just protecting my ego, my image, my refusal to admit that I had married a monster. I am sorry, Isla. I am sorry for every cruel word, every humiliating comment, every moment I made you feel worthless. You did not deserve any of it. None of the women Richard hurt deserved it. I am not asking for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I am just asking that you know I am truly, deeply sorry. You are brave in a way I never was. And I hope that someday, I can find even a fraction of the courage you showed. Lydia. I read the letter 3 times. And then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. I did not respond. I did not know what I would even say. But I kept it. Because it was proof that speaking up matters. That standing up for yourself matters. That sometimes the people who hurt us are just as broken as we are. And sometimes, they need to see someone stand strong to realize how weak they have been. 2 years after everything happened, My life looked completely different. I was promoted again. This time to senior director. I had a team of 15. I was leading some of the biggest projects the company had ever undertaken. I had moved into a beautiful apartment. Nothing extravagant, but it was mine. And it was filled with things that made me happy. I had started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I was learning to trust again. To believe that I deserved kindness and respect. And most importantly, I had found myself again. The woman I had been before Marcus tried to destroy me. Before Lydia tried to break me. Before I let other people's opinions define my worth. I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. One afternoon, I was leaving the office when I ran into someone I had not seen in years. A woman named Jasmine who had worked at the firm briefly before I joined. "Isla," she said, her eyes wide. "Oh my God, is it really you?" "Jasmine," I said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I am consulting on a project," she said. "But I heard you work here now. I heard what you did. What you went through." I nodded, suddenly uncomfortable. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I was one of the women Richard Shaw harassed. Years ago. He offered me a settlement and I took it. I signed an NDA and walked away. And I have regretted it every single day." My heart ached for her. "But when I heard what you did," she continued, "when I heard that you refused to stay silent, that you fought back and won, it changed something in me. I broke my NDA. I came forward during the investigation. And for the first time in years, I feel free." Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for being brave enough to do what I could not." We hugged, both of us crying, two women who had survived the same monster. And I realized something profound. My story was never just about me. It was about every woman who had been silenced. Every woman who had been called desperate for wanting respect. Every woman who had been made to feel small for taking up space. By refusing to stay silent, I had given others permission to speak. By refusing to accept being treated poorly, I had shown others they deserved better. By standing up for myself, I had stood up for all of us. That night, I went home and opened my laptop. I had been thinking about writing a book. Telling my full story. Not just the highlights, but the hard parts too. The nights I cried myself to sleep. The moments I wanted to give up. The fear and doubt and pain. But also the strength I found. The courage I did not know I had. The power of refusing to stay silent. I started typing. And the words flowed. Because this story, my story, needed to be told. Not for revenge. Not for attention. Not even for justice, though that was part of it. But for every woman who needed to hear that she was not alone. That she was not crazy. That she was not overreacting. That what happened to her was not her fault. And that she had the power to change her story. Just like I did. 3 years after the luncheon, my book was published. Untouchable. How I went from desperate to unstoppable. It became a bestseller within weeks. Women around the world reached out to me, sharing their stories, thanking me for giving voice to their pain. I did book tours, spoke at more conferences, started a nonprofit to help women dealing with workplace harassment. And through it all, I never forgot where I came from. The broken girl on the bathroom floor crying over a man who did not deserve her tears. The desperate girl being humiliated at company events for existing. The scared girl documenting evidence because she did not know if anyone would believe her. I never forgot her. Because she was the reason I could be who I am now. Strong. Confident. Untouchable. Not because I was perfect. Not because I never felt pain or fear or doubt. But because I refused to let other people's cruelty define me. I refused to stay silent. I refused to shrink. And that made all the difference. Looking back now, I sometimes think about Lydia. I wonder where she is. What she is doing. If she ever found the courage to leave the cage she built for herself. I do not hate her. I do not even feel anger toward her anymore. I just feel sad. Sad that she spent so many years protecting a lie. Sad that she hurt so many women to preserve an image. Sad that she never learned the most important lesson. That true strength is not in tearing others down. It is in building yourself up. It is in standing up for what is right, even when it is hard. It is in refusing to let anyone make you feel less than you are. As for Richard, I heard he tried to start a consulting firm of his own after he was terminated. It failed within 6 months. Turns out, reputation matters. And his was destroyed beyond repair. Last I heard, he was working for a small company in another state, making a fraction of what he used to make, living a fraction of the life he used to live. And I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Nothing. Because my story was never about destroying him. It was about saving myself. And I did. I saved myself. I rebuilt myself. I became the woman I was always meant to be. Strong. Brave. Unbreakable. Untouchable. Today, I woke up in my beautiful apartment, made myself coffee, got ready for work, and as I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw someone I was proud of. Not because of my title, not because of my success, not because of my book or my speeches or any of it, but because I chose myself. I chose to speak up when staying silent would have been easier. I chose to stand up when sitting down would have been safer. I chose to fight when giving up would have been understandable. And that choice changed everything. So to anyone reading this, to anyone who has ever felt desperate, worthless, small, invisible, to anyone who has been called too much or not enough, to anyone who has been harassed, manipulated, gaslit, or abused, I see you. I believe you. And I am telling you right now, you are not desperate. You are not worthless. You are not too much. You are enough. Exactly as you are. And you have the power to change your story. It will not be easy. It will be terrifying. You will want to give up 1,000 times. But if you hold on, if you keep fighting, if you refuse to let them break you, you will come out the other side stronger than you ever imagined. I promise you. Because I did it. And if I can do it, so can you. They used to call me desperate. Now they call me untouchable. And you know what? They are both right. I was desperate. Desperate for respect. Desperate for dignity. Desperate to be seen as a human being worthy of basic decency. And now I am untouchable. Not because I am perfect. Not because I never feel pain. But because I know my worth. And nothing anyone says or does can take that away from me. That is the power of choosing yourself. That is the power of refusing to stay silent. That is the power of being untouchable. And it is yours for the taking. You just have to be brave enough to reach for it. So reach. Fight. Stand. Speak. Because your voice matters. Your story matters. You matter. And the world needs to hear from you. Do not let them silence you. Do not let them break you. Do not let them make you small. Stand tall. Stand strong. Stand untouchable. Because you are not desperate. You are powerful. And it is time the world knew it. My name is Isla. And this is my story. A story of pain and courage. Of humiliation and triumph. Of being broken and choosing to rebuild. Of being called desperate and becoming untouchable. This is the story of how I saved myself. And if I can do it, so can you. Never forget that. Never forget your power. Never forget that you are worthy of respect, dignity, and love. No matter what anyone else says. No matter how many times they try to tear you down. You are enough. You have always been enough. And you always will be. Stand in that truth. Own that truth. Live that truth. And watch as your life transforms. Because when you know your worth, when you refuse to accept anything less than you deserve, when you stand untouchable in your truth, the whole world shifts. Doors open. Opportunities appear. People show up differently. Not because you changed them, but because you changed yourself. And that changes everything. So whatever you are facing right now, whatever battle you are fighting, whatever pain you are enduring, remember this. You are stronger than you know. Braver than you believe. More powerful than you can imagine. And you are not alone. I am with you. Every woman who has stood up is with you. Every woman who has spoken out is with you. Every woman who has refused to stay silent is with you. We are a force. A movement. A revolution. And together we are unstoppable. So stand up. Speak up. Show up. As your full, authentic, powerful self. And watch as the world makes room for you. Because you are not desperate. You are untouchable. And it is time everyone knew it. This is my story. What will yours be? If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength, if it gave you the courage to stand up for yourself, please subscribe to our channel. We share real stories about real women who refused to be broken, who chose courage over comfort, who turned their pain into power. Join our community of strong, brave, untouchable women. Hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and let us keep inspiring each other to rise, to fight, to stand tall. Because together, we are unstoppable. Together, we are changing the world. One story at a time. Subscribe now and be part of the movement. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing. Thank you for being brave enough to stand with us.